another one. The Gemara in Bava Batra, page 21, is making a point about a comment in the Mishnah saying that if children are making noise in a private house, no one should interfere them, and you're not allowed to tell them off. And the Gemara is saying it's not just any children in a private house making a lot of noise, but it's talking about a group of kids who are studying Torah. In other words, it's a classroom. And if the kids in the classroom learning Torah are making a lot of noise, you have no claim to interfere that classroom. And as part of that, the Gemara mentions, actually it's Amoraim, Rav Yehuda and Rav in Bavel are mentioning a person called Yoshua ben Gamla, that many years ago he made a decision that the community need to take responsibility for the education of the kids. And now there are two figures in the Talmud called Yoshua ben Gamla, and there's a big discussion whether they're the same person, because the other Yoshua ben Gamla, the Gemara tells us that he married Marta bat Baitos, the rich priest priest woman, who bought his position with money. And it's not so sure that he was a good person. And here we're saying this is a good person, and we remember him for the best for what he did. So some scholars say they're not the same person. Some say that they are the same person, but he also had good things that he did. I'd like to look at it as if we're talking about a separate person. In any case, the discussion is around the 1st century, before the destruction of the Second Temple. And let's share the sources and dive right into that discussion. So the Gemara says the following. Rav Yehuda says Rav Yehuda says, truly that man is remembered for the good, and his name is Yoshua ben Gamla. If not for him, the Torah would have been forgotten from the Jewish people. This is a big thing to be said. In other words, Yoshua ben Gamla did something that helped or saved the learning of Torah in Am Yisrael, as I said, the 1st century before the destruction of the temple. And what's the story around it? So initially, the situation was whoever had a father would have his father teach him Torah, and whoever did not have a father would not learn Torah at all. And the Gemara explains that they're interpreted that the verse that states, and you shall teach them, and to means, and you yourselves, otam atem, you shall teach. Okay, so it used to be that if a child, his father knew how to teach Torah, he taught him Torah. And if the kid did not have a father, not only meaning that, God forbid, he didn't have a father, but the father did not know enough Torah in order to teach him, and therefore that child did not learn Torah, because they understood the obligation to be the father himself to teach Torah. Then what happened when Chachamim saw the situation that some kids learn Torah and some kids do not learn Torah, when the sages saw that not everyone was capable of teaching the children and Torah study was declining, they instituted an ordinance that teachers of children should be established in Jerusalem. They interpreted the verse for Torah emerges from Zion. Ki mitzion tetzeh Torah. But still, whoever had a father, the father would take the kids up to Yerushalayim, bring them to school. And whoever did not have a father, or the father was too busy working, did not bring the kids to school. So therefore, the sages instituted another ordinance that the teachers of children should be established in one city in each and every region. Pelech. Now, I just want you to see that these are anonymous declaration or ordinance that the Chachamim are mentioning. So they put a teacher in a big city in every region, and they brought the students in at the age of 16 or 17. But what happened then? But as the students were old and had not yet any formal education, a student whose teacher grew angry at him would rebel against him and leave. So then came along Yoshua ben Gamla when he saw that, and he said, okay, the teachers of children should be established in each and every province and each and every town, and they would bring the children in to learn at the age of 6 and at the age of 7. And in other words, that what Yeshua ben Gamla is saying is like, first of all, he's bringing the age of must learn to the age of 6 and 7. And he says it has to be in every city, in every town. We should have schools. And with regard to the matter at hand, since this system was established for the masses, the neighbors cannot prevent a scholar from teaching Torah in a courtyard. This in regards for the Sugya in Bava Batra. But our discussion here is the takana of Yoshua ben Gamla that says we are taking responsibility for the education of our children in every place, in every city and every town. We, the community, must provide teachers because it cannot be at the hands of the parents anymore from several reasons. Now, of course, the obligation to teach our kids is learned from the verse in Devarim, for example, and many other verses that are saying "Veshinantam levanecha," and you shall teach your children. And as we hear in Masechet Kiddushin that we learned many months ago, years ago, that the father is obligated with regard to his son to circumcise him and to redeem him, and to teach him Torah. Okay, and the responsibility for the education of the children is upon the teachers, and therefore the takanot came during a situation when people did not do that anymore, and the fathers could not teach their children. Now, interestingly, in the Yerushalmi, we hear a very similar declaration, a similar decree in the name of Shimon ben Shattach. Shimon ben Shattach was a chacham who lived before the destruction of the temple, but he was much earlier than earlier than Shimon ben Gamla. And Shimon ben Shattach taught in Yerushalmi, it's recorded in the Yerushalmi, that children have to go to school. In other words, it's a little bit different. Yoshua ben Gamla is saying we should put teachers everywhere. And Shimon ben Shattach is saying children must go to school. In other words, we should not put it in the hand of the parents anymore. It shouldn't be a responsibility in the household because it's not working. And if we're not teaching the kids properly to read, to write, to learn Torah, then we will not be able to pass on the tradition and to pass on our identity. So some say that Shimon ben Shattach is the anonymous decrees mentioned in our Gemara. And then later in time, when Yoshua ben Gamla saw that it's not working, then he fixed it to be everywhere and in an earlier age. But it is interesting that in the Yerushalmi, it's the children have to go to school, and it's not what the community or the parents must do to the kids. Now, one commentator in the beginning of the 20th century called Rabbi Sachar Tamar, in his book explained why Shimon ben Shattach, at least it's the earlier point in history when we hear a Chacham saying that kids must go to school. Why did it happen in his time? And Shimon ben Shattach lived. He was the brother of Shlom Tzion Malka, the wife of Alexander Yanai the king. This is a time where the people of Israel in Eretz Israel are divided to at least 3 groups. We have the sages, we have the groups, the Chachamim, who were mostly part of the common people. We had the Isiim, who lived in the desert and were very ascetic, and they had their own rules. And we have the Tzedokим in Yerushalayim, who were part of the priest priests' families who all together not were only corrupted, but they also didn't believe in Olam Haba and had different ideas theologically. So Ravi Yisachar Tamar is suggesting that in such terrible times, Shimon Beshatach saw that there is no cure for the rift among his people except in the education of faith in Torah for the children of Beit Rabban, so that they too will not be washed away in the Saducean stream. Okay, so it was urgent to have schools that will teach the children of Am Yisrael the proper tradition according to the Chachamim, and that's why it was first came at that time of Shimon ben Shatach. We'll go back to that in a minute. And the Rambam in Hilchot Talmud Torah is extending that order to really be a very serious one, to say that and to mention in his halacha something that is saying is stated in the Gemarot, that school children should not be rendered idle even for the sake of building the holy temple. In other words, if you have kids learning Torah and you need more hands to build the Mikdash, let them continue to learn Torah. It's more urgent and it's more important to build the Mikdash. And I think it's a beautiful metaphor to understand that you cannot build a building if the foundations are not properly there and put. So the foundations of the people is not just a building, but it's the education through the next generation with the kids that must be taken care of. And I just thought it was interesting in the situation today, definitely in Israel, but Rambam is saying 25 kids is enough per class, per teacher. And if you have more than 40, you must divide them to 2 teachers. But there's also another aspect. In the Gemara in Masechet Shabbat is saying this really not easy thing to read, that Rav Himnuna is saying Jerusalem was destroyed only because school children there were interrupted from studying Torah. Okay, the community did not see the importance of learning Torah, or maybe they were busy with other things, thinking the other things were more crucial and urgent at that time, and they neglected teaching their kids Torah. And Rabbi Himnuna is saying, Bemet lo aleinu, that Yerushalayim was destroyed because of that, because they neglected teaching kids, children Torah, and they were wandering all around. And we hear an echoing for that in Aruch HaShulchan, Rav Epstein, at the 19th century, and he's saying in his halachic book, one must hire a tutor for their sons unless they are teaching them themselves. But the son of one's fellow, one is not obligated to pay for him on his own, but rather the community of residents is to make a Talmud Torah as I have written. In other words, the responsibility of a community is to have a Talmud Torah, a place where the kids are going to be educated at. So I need to take care of for my child, and you need to take care for your child, but it's a community obligation that there will be a Talmud Torah, so people who cannot teach their children can send their children there. And for one's grandson, great grandson, we force him to pay for his studies when he is able to, and the child's parents are not, and when the child's parents are not able to, or if he doesn't have parents, and if the kids doesn't have parents, lo aleinu, or the parents don't have money, they force the entire community to chip in for them also to be part of the school. And thus, we force all city residents to establish and maintain a Talmud Torah, to place tutors there to teach the poor and orphan children. This is an act of chesed. This is an act of arevut hadadit, of togetherness. In other words, when we establish, and we know that this is what happened for 2,000 years all over the Jewish diaspora. You establish a community, you have a shul, and you have a mikveh, and you have a shochet, and you have a butcher, but you also have a Talmud Torah. And the people of the community, poor and rich, are putting money in order to sustain and to hire the teachers for the Talmud Torah. and we forced this, that everyone should give donation or from the communal fund, and every city that does not have a Talmud Torah, its end will be in destruction. Of course, he's echoing what we saw from the Gemara, and we should separate from it. You mean, don't go to live wherever when there's no education system for the children. And I think that again here is not only echoing what we saw in Masechet Shabbat, that's why Yerushalayim was destroyed, but he's actually saying that there's no future for a community who does not invest in the education of the children, to learn, to teach them their identity, to teach Torah, to teach the values, to teach the legacy and tradition that we carry as a Jewish community. And this was the custom across all of Israel, that there would be a Talmud Torah schools, and the poor and orphan kids would go there, and the school would feed and dress the kids until they matured. And it's so important that he's saying it's not only to educate the kids who don't have the money, but it's also to sustain and support them until they mature and can hold for themselves. And by the way, in the rest of the source that I didn't bring here, he's saying, and then when the kids are old enough, and you see that some of them are able to continue to learn Torah, then you take those specific kids and you teach them advanced Torah learning. And those who cannot, you teach them skills, you teach them a proper job, you teach them any other occupation that they can work in and have a parnasa, an income for themselves. Rav Ovadia Yosef, in a beautiful tshuva, is saying that it's in Tafshin Lamed Zayin in 1977, and he says, and now that although the main mitzvot of Talmud Torah rest on the fathers of the students, nevertheless, the teachers who know how to teach Torah to the infants and have become experts in the profession of learning Torah also have the duty to teach Torah to the children of Israel. Rav Ovadia understands that not everyone who learns a lot of Torah can teach Torah. And today, because not every parents can teach Torah to their kids, when there are people that know Torah and are good, becoming an expert in profession in learning Torah, they have the duty as part of the chiyuv, the chiyuv of the father, and to learn to teach Torah. There's a chiyuv on someone who learns how to teach the children. As the Rambam says in Hilchot Talmud Torah, just as a man obligated to teach his son Torah, so he is obliged to teach his son's son, as it is said, and tell them to your sons and your sons' sons. And not his son and his sons, and not his son and his son's son only, but it is the commandment for every wise man of Israel to teach all the students Torah, even though they are not his sons, as it says, and he's quoting here a midrash, and you shall halachic midrash, and you shall teach it to your sons from the word of mouth they learn, and your son, and from the words of mouth they learn, your sons are your students, that the students are called sons. In other words, Rav Ovadia is saying, and he's building it on this midrash halacha, that the Torah understands that it's not only if it's your son or if it's your great grandson that you have an obligation to teach, but sons are also sometimes there's a usage of the word sons, banim, also as students. So if you can, you must teach the students, even though they're not your children. You must teach Torah, and which obviously extends that. And I want to finish with a beautiful quote from Rav Ben Zion Uziel, who used to be the Rav of Medinat Israel, one of the first, together with Rav Kook. He was Rav Rashi Israel before the establishment of the State of Israel, but he also lived to see also the establishment of the State of Israel. And this is from 1951. And he's saying, as being a Rav who is very much see the state of Israel as part of Geula and as a lechatchila thing that very, very Zionistic. And Rav Uziel is saying, from then on, the government itself appoints teachers and admits students to school. The traditional responsibility of the community to make sure that there are Talmudei Torah, schools for kids in the community, says Rav Uziel, is now moving to the hands of the government. And the Israeli and the Jewish government must appoint teachers and admits children to school. And otherwise, he combines both the words of Shimon ben Shattach and the words of Yoshua ben Gamla, and he's saying this is our duty as a Jewish state to have schools and to have the kids go to school and to have free schooling for school, because it's our duty to educate our kids and to teach them not only knowledge but also the heritage and the tradition of our people.